Bless you and welcome to another episode of God at Work. And today I'm actually looking at some things that I first heard Pastor Wayne Cordero talking about the first time I heard him speak. And he mentioned a couple of the things that I want to look at today. And it comes from a large part of what I'm going to look at today. The examples are in one of his books, which just happens to be in both languages. There's a picture here of them. And it's called Attitudes That Attract Success. And it shows how in a lot of ways, in many areas of our life, our attitude can change the entire situation. The eyes that we look at it through, the situation through, who we're relying on when we're looking at it, what we're doing to get to that position, and it all makes a difference, our attitude. But we've got to choose what attitude we're going to take if we really want to come through something victorious. So, in the book, there's one of his stories that I really like that talks about the beautiful Hawaiian flowers that they make into leis. And I just loved the odors of most of the flowers. There's a couple of them that were a little strong for me, and my allergies would go crazy, but they were so beautiful. And the title of this little section from his book, it's called A Fragrance or a Bad Odor. The choice is yours. And here it's referring to the Hawaiian leis that are made with so many different flowers, and they're absolutely beautiful. They all look as beautiful, but some of them, the scent is so strong. Others, it's just wonderful. Like if you look at this next picture, there's several of the different types of flowers here. They look similar, but up there in the top right-hand corner, you've got the Pua Kenikini, and that's the one I cannot wear because of my allergies, but it's so beautiful, and it really does smell nice. It's just my body does not take the allergies smell. But the one in the middle there, the white, that's got the lei and then it's got the flower in the middle, that's my very favorite lei. The scent is called white ginger. And it is just gorgeous. It's not too strong, not too weak that you can't smell it, but it's just beautiful. And I love the way it just sits flat and everything else. So that was always the one I choose. But then you've got the hyacinth, you got the pikaki, and you got the plumeria, and they're all there. And they make these most beautiful leis with them. And they use them to give them, to say hello, to say goodbye, to say I love you, It's really beautiful. You look at them and it smells so perfect. To the point that if I've got a beautiful lei, if I've got a white ginger lei around my neck, and I'm walking around and I can walk into any situation and it all smells beautiful. I can walk up to somebody that might have just finished running a race and be all sweaty and stinky, but they smell beautiful to me. Why? Because I've got that beautiful white ginger lei on. Or, I can walk into a room that's got the most horribly just been cooking onions, but all I smell is my beautiful white ginger lei around my neck. But then you can choose what you're going to make your lei out of. You can choose what odor you're going to have or carry. You can choose what the odor is going to be. I can choose to have my beautiful white ginger lei, or I can choose to make, they call them leis, but it's just like a flower necklace sort of. You can choose to make it out of dead fish. That's not going to smell very good. Or you can choose to make it out of old, dirty, smelly socks. It's going to have a bad odor no matter where you go. If you've got a lei on made out of dead fish, it's going to stink no matter where you go. You could go into a beautiful perfumery, and it's still going to stink because you got this lei of dead fish all around your neck, right under your nose. But it's the same. Those things are very visible, old smelly socks and dead fish. But you could make your lei with things that aren't so visible, but just cause just as bad an attitude. You could make your lei out of, for unforgiveness. You can make your lei out of bitterness. You can make your lei out of, you can make it out of envy. You could make it out of jealousy. You can make it out of gossip. You can make your layout of so many horrible things that your attitude absolutely stinks. And you wonder why people want to stay away. You wonder why they don't want to come close. Because, not necessarily because of the smell, but because of your attitude. And we've got to make sure that we can line our attitude up to have a fragrant smell rather than a bad odor. But it's our choice what we're going to make our layout of. Are we going to make it out of the beautiful Hawaiian flowers? Or are we going to make it out of a bad attitude? Are we going to make it out of bitterness and unforgiveness and hatred? What are you going to make your layout of? Some days I've got to really say, hey, wait a minute, I better go find a different layout. I got to go find my white ginger. Because my attitude might not be that good. And I got to make sure I make that change. Because I don't want to smell like dead fish or old smelly socks. I want to smell like a beautiful plumeria or pikaki. Any of them. But it's a choice that I have to make. So the choice is mine. And that choice that I make can change my life. It can change the attitude of people around me toward me as well. If I walk in with a good attitude, it will completely change the whole situation. But I've got to make sure that I am carrying it. Another story that I read and I heard from him, from that book, Attitudes That Attract Success, is another one. It's a story about, how we as service givers, or we as people wanting to serve people and encourage people to be a part. Be a part, whether it's of a business or be a part of our church or whatever. What do we want to do? We want to make sure that our attitude smells more like a beautiful white ginger lei than it does of dead fish, than it does of arrogance and bitterness and hatred and all that type of thing. We want to make sure that it's got that beautiful fragrance rather than a bad odor. But there's a story in there that was told by the president of the Bank of America quite a few years ago. And it was about one of the employees' bad attitudes. And how this little old man, and he had his old, looked like a work shirt on, and he's out there waiting in the lineup. It's quite a long lineup that day. And he edges his way from the back of the lineup to the front of the line. And he finally gets up to one of the tellers. And he made his little deposit. And then he asked her to stamp his parking ticket. Because the rule used to be that if you were banking in the bank, they would validate your ticket so you could shop and be there for, a while. Well, they found that people were abusing it and they were staying there shopping all day rather than just to come in and do their banking and maybe grab something quick. And so they made a change of the rules that now you're going to have to pay a little percentage of your ticket, or anything over a certain number of hours. You're going to have to pay. And this little old man, when she said, but now, she stamped it, but now you're going to have to pay a portion. Well, why? I've never been made do that before. Well, yes, but that's the rule now. He says, well, can't you just stamp it? You've always stamped it for me all these years. Can't you just validate? Well, that's the rule. I don't make the rule. I just dish them out. And he's, but look, just stamp it so I don't have to pay anything when I go out. It's this little old man, probably, in his old work shirt, didn't look like he had much money, but, the lady was just so rude to him. Just take it. And that's the way it is. Get out of my lineup. There's a bunch of people waiting behind you and I got to serve them. So just carry on. So that's fine. He went back to the back of the lineup. Quietly walked back up to the front of the lineup after waiting a long time to get there again. He walks up to the first available teller and says, I want to make a withdrawal. How much do you want to withdraw? The lady's asking, and he says, all of my money. I want to withdraw $4.2 million. What? Well, I'm going to take it and deposit it across the street where the attitude doesn't stink like it does here. And she says, what do you mean? I said, and he said, well, the last teller, she's telling me, well, that's the rule, and it's going to be that way now. We're not going to validate your complete parking. And I just said, well, you've been doing it for me for so many years, because he was quite an elderly gentleman. And she said, no, we don't do that. If you don't like it, just get out of here. Get out of the lineup, because people are waiting. And he said, I don't want somebody to treat me like that. Whether I've got millions or I've got just a few dollars, I don't deserve that treatment. And consequently, I don't want to deal with this bank. And so the attitude of that teller cost the bank $4.2 million. Our attitudes can do the same thing. Maybe not in quite as dramatic a visual example. I don't have $4.2 million to go into the bank and withdraw if somebody treats me brutally, but I got other areas that, I need to watch out for. And so here, $4.2 million is what that teller's attitude cost the bank. I wonder if it cost her her job. I don't know. But I do know it cost the bank a lot of money. But if you look at the verse, in John chapter 13, verse 17, and it says, if you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Some translations say, happy are you if you do them, But, when you know something is right, do it. When you know something is a bad attitude, I don't know how many times I've had to zip up my lips, so I don't say it, or so I don't regret saying something I don't really want to say. But, we need to watch our attitude, because it can truly affect everything going on around us. It can affect our job. It can affect, if we're teachers, it can affect our students. And there was one student when I was teaching an immersion course at a Bible college. Actually, it was in Venezuela. I was teaching a course there. It was just a short immersion course. And one student kept coming up to me. Well, actually, several students kept coming up to me, but about one professor. And this professor apparently was very nasty to pretty well all of the students. And none of them liked him. They all wanted to transfer out of his class, but they couldn't, because it was a credit they had to have. But every day they went to that class dreading what he was going to do that day. It was so nasty. And there is a little percentages of something here that I wanted to share with you. It's just something that was written on the wall of a bathroom at a gas station. But it said, why do customers, or why do your congregation members, or why do your students, or whatever, quit? Listen to the percentages. 1% die. 3% move away. 5% move because of the location. 7% quit because of product dissatisfaction. But listen to this. 84% of customers quit because of an attitude of indifference shown to them by one of the employees. And I think of that because I love greeting at my church. I love being on the door greeting. But I constantly think, the attitude that I give them when they walk in the door, that's the first impression they get of the church coming in. And I want it to be a good attitude that gives them the smell of beautiful ginger ale rather than dead fish or old socks. I most certainly do not want resentment or anger or bitterness or any of that to come through. And so I constantly make sure I'm guarding my mouth and not saying things I shouldn't. Because those percentages are real. They were actually validated by one of those census taking things that did the statistics and to put it all together. But it says, if you know these things, happy are you if you do them. So for me, knowing that my bad attitude could turn somebody away from this church or could cause them to get so upset that they don't even hear the message being given. And so my attitude caused them to not even receive what God was speaking to them for that day. I don't want to be found in that position. None of us should. None of us want to chase somebody away. None of us want to be the one responsible for somebody not listening to what's going on anymore. But we can be very easily. And then there's an expression that I found in that book, Attitudes That Attract Success, that I was mentioning. And it says, people who are effective have used setbacks as stepping stones, whereas ineffective people have used them as excuses. I thought, oh, how true that is. And I was thinking of several different examples. But one example that really hit me hard was when we were in Hawaii and we had a special guest speaker. When I was pastoring in Hawaii, we had a special guest speaker, and some of you might know his name, some of you might not. Nick Vujicic. And he is an evangelist. And he travels all over the world with his evangelism, and he's married and has 4 kids. And he got, when he was over in Hawaii, he saw everybody surfing. He wanted to try it. But take a look at the pictures of this person I'm talking about. This is Nick. He's surfing. He has no arms or legs. He was born with a condition. He has no arms or legs. And the picture on the far right, you can see his little foot. That's the only limb he's gotten anyway. He calls it his chicken drumstick. That's what he calls it. And so he pulls it out and he just sort of waves to the people with it because he has no arms to wave, just joking around. And when he was born, the couple of toes that he has on that foot were fused together. So to make it more like fingers, they unfused them. And so here he is. He completely, no arms, no legs, but he can type faster than the non-professional typist. He types 43 words a minute with just a couple of toes. Where a lot of people would give up and say, well, I can't do that. I can't type. I can't type my report. I don't have any hands. Just like he was up on the surfboard in that picture. In Hawaii, he saw people surfing. He wanted to try it. So there he is, up on the surfboard, catching the waves and heading on in. And, he tried everything. He was willing to do whatever it took. But, when he was born, his mom left him in the hospital. They didn't abandon him and put him up for adoption or anything like that. They left him in the hospital, mainly because of the shock and the confusion and all that type of thing. But they ended up going back, of course, and taking him home. But he had a very, very difficult life. In school, he was bullied constantly because of his medical condition. There was nothing he could do about it. That's the way he was born. And it was a very rare condition. But that's how he was born. And it was a condition, it was called, what was it called? It was called some strange name. But it was, the disability, it was called Amelia syndrome. And anybody with that disability is born without arms and legs. But it's very rare. So here he was, no arms, no legs, trying to go to school like a normal child. And he would try to participate, with the little stubbies he's got at the top of his leg. He'd sort of waddle himself along. When he came to the church to speak, because he was so short without arms and legs, that one of his workers would lift him out of his special wheelchair and stand him up on the table. And he could stand up on this table and he preached from there. And that's where he showed people his little chicken drumstick, as he called it. But when he was in school, when he was just young in school, he tried to kill himself. He tried to take his own life by drowning himself in a bathtub. Because he was so down. Because everybody made fun of him. Nobody wanted to hang around him. He said one time, people were afraid they could catch what I have. and that they were going to lose their arms and legs. He said, I don't know how that could work, he said, but that's how they felt. So, but, he never wanted to see himself as unable or disabled. He wanted to see himself as able to do whatever he sets his mind and heart to do, and looks to God to help him through it. So when he was over at our church speaking, we were in a stadium, and there was a whole pile of people there, and he's standing up there, gave a very good message. And then, because we had 5 services, he'd go out between the services, and he'd be there, and people would want to come and take pictures with him, and so he'd do that and just chat with everybody, and you never knew that he felt sorry for himself in any way, because he didn't. He had an attitude that brought joy, that brought a spirit of, I can do it. The scripture says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's why he wanted to get up onto that surfboard. Several people that were surfers in the church tried to, convince him that could be a little dangerous. You're going to get out there, and what if you fall off your surfboard? Oh, I'll get back up to the top of the water. Well, then what if a big wave comes over you? Oh, I'll hold my breath, And he didn't let them discourage him. But his parents had brought him up. After the initial rough start, they brought him up to see the bright side of every situation, not just the dullness and the horridness and the I can't do it, but I can do everything through Christ who strengthens me. But even though he'd struggled, he tried to commit suicide and everything else, he carried on. And now that person that nobody gave any hope to, that some doctors even advised that they just leave him to be taken care of in an institution until he died. That man has probably won more people to Christ. That man has probably given more hope to people that have always been told you can't than anybody else I know. Just watching him and listening to him, and being that I was on staff there, he was in the lunchroom and everything with us, and it was amazing just watching his attitude and how it changed his whole life, from a life of hopelessness to a life of hope and giving hope and inspiration to others. You and I can do the same thing. We might not have been born with no arms and no legs, but we can have that attitude. So people who are effective have used setbacks. Here was a setback for him. No arms, no legs when he was born. But they could use that as stepping stones. Whereas ineffective people have used them as excuses. If anybody had an excuse, after having met Nick, I would look at my situation, because I'd had all these different issues, like, oh my God, my health issues, one after the other. And I would look at them, and they would look at Nick. He's got it every single day of his life. Does he make excuses? No. So I have tried in every situation not to make excuses. Like when I got out of the hospital with leukemia, I was told I would never travel again. What did I do? A few days later, I was on a plane traveling, and I continued to travel. I continued and carried on because I knew that I didn't want to use it as an excuse. I knew that even like right now with a broken foot, I don't want to use this as an excuse. I'm going to get up and get moving and get going. I haven't stopped doing God at work, even though I've got a badly broken foot and it's been in the cast for 8 weeks now. But I know that God doesn't want me using it as an excuse. Oh, I can't. My foot's too sore. So the first time I could get out of the house, I was off at church just a few days after, and then, anywhere I can go. As soon as I got permission to drive, I was in my car and on the road. I wasn't going to let anything hold me back. But I can't. I've only got one foot. No, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, if Christ said, no, don't you do that, that's a different story. That's too dangerous. Don't do that. You're not going to be steady on the road, and it could be harmful to other people. Wait until you're a little stronger. But no, he didn't. I got permission from my doctor. I didn't just jump out before it. Got in my car and off I was. And we've got to look. What's my attitude going to be? Is it going to be one of keeping my eyes fixed on Jesus? Is it going to be one of knowing that God is able, no matter what my physical condition? And I've had enough of them to know that there's always an excuse that can come up. When I went to the mission field, I ended up with malaria 11 times. And people said, maybe you should go back because you're very susceptible to malaria, obviously. Maybe it's too dangerous for you to be here. Malaria can kill you. I said, if I know where I'm supposed to be and God has told me to be here, I'm going to be here because there's no safer place to be than in the middle of God's perfect will. And so that's what I tried to live my life by, hanging on to what is His will. But that's also why every time I would get an invitation to go somewhere and travel, I would ask God first, am I supposed to go? Are you sending me? Or is it just an invitation? I need to know, God. Is that where you want me to be? Because I want to remain in the very center of your perfect will for my life at that moment. Amen. And it's something you also should be doing. If you want to do something, ask. You can ask God, I want to do it. If you say, God, I really want to do such and such, can I? He'll probably tell you, yeah. But should I? Not necessarily. But He also will give you the truth about your situation. So I want to challenge you. If you're going through something and you're not sure whether you could do it or not, maybe you've got a little situation where you've got some kind of disability. Maybe you've had some kind of an issue that you've been dealing with. Are you going to let it hold you back? Or are you going to let it use it as stepping stones to get to where God would have you be at that moment? It can be a stepping stone, or it can be a stumbling block. But the choice is mine. What am I going to do? And I want to choose to have a good attitude and look at it as in God's hands, nothing is impossible. Amen. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all that you are doing in my life, in the life of many around me, things that you desire to do in all of our lives to teach us. Teach us your ways, Lord. Teach us to be more like you. Teach us to have a good attitude. Teach us to not look at all the bad odors, but all the good odors that we can have around us. Teach us not to look at the situation as dead fish or old smelly socks, but a beautiful white ginger lay. So, Father, I ask, Lord, that you will guide our hearts. Help us to place our eyes on you. Help us to know what you say about a situation. Like with Mick, he never said, I can't. God told me I can't. He said, I'm going to try and see what happens. So, Lord, just like all these people that think, I can't do this, I can't do that, I'm too old, I don't have enough money, I'm this, I'm that. God, help us to allow you to change our hearts. In your precious name, I pray, Lord, and I ask that you will speak to each person listening, so that even if they've only got a couple of toes, and that's all they've got to work with, that they will do all that is possible just with those couple of toes. The crowd that gathered on the beach when you encouraged Nick and gave him the desire to get up and go surfing witnessed to a lot of people. And Father, I ask that you will give me the strength, no matter what I'm going through, to carry on and be a witness for you, Lord. In your precious name I ask. Father, have your perfect will. We could all have our lives changed when we choose what attitude we're going to walk in. We can walk into a situation with a preconceived idea. Oh, I can't do that. There's no way I'm going to do that. Or we can do it in obedience and know that God's going to back it if it's His will, if that's what He desires. And we know what His will. We just have to look at His book. Look at the scriptures and we find what His will is. It's very easy. It's not hidden. It's not there hidden from us. But He wants us to choose Him, to choose the attitude we're going to respond with, to choose the way we're going to walk forward, allowing Him to walk and work through us. So, Lord, as Jerry sings this song, I ask, Lord, that You will touch hearts as they're listening. And it's called He Changed My Life. And I can tell you for sure, He's changed mine. Jerry, He changed my life.
Questions running all around you, don't know what you want to do. Is he fact or is he fiction? You've heard so many stories, don't know what to do. He changed my life, set me free, gave me what I really needed, gave me what I really wanted, took away those chains I thought I needed so bad. All those things won't make you happy, carnal things can't satisfy a hungry soul that needs a feeding, a little child that needs to cry. He changed my life, set me free, gave me what I really needed, gave me what I really wanted, took away those chains I thought I needed so bad. Behold, he stands at the door and knocks. If any man will hear his voice and dare to open the door, he will come into him. He changed my life, set me free, gave me what I really needed, gave me what I really wanted, took away those chains I thought I needed. He changed my life, set me free, gave me what I really needed, gave me what I really wanted, took away those chains I thought I needed so bad.